what do you do with the bantamweight division? What do you do with the rankings right now? And who gets the next title shot? Who fights who? There's a lot of questions after that UFC 280 card about that stacked bantamweight division, which may be the best division in the whole UFC. It's definitely in the running. So we know Aljamain Sterling beat TJ Dillashaw, injury involved and all that, but he still got the win. And TJ's most likely going to take time off because of the injury. It could take several months for him to recover, and then maybe even a year for his shoulder to be 100%. Sean O'Malley got a controversial win, which probably shouldn't have went to him, over Petr Yan, and this shakes up the whole rankings. How do they do this now? Because the number one contender lost, so he can't be number one anymore. TJ Dillashaw is number 2, who just lost to Sterling. You have number 3, Merab, who doesn't really change much. Cory Sandhagen is number 4, Marlon Vera is number 5, Rob Font's number 6, and you go down the list to number 11, which is Sean O'Malley. O'Malley beating Petr Yan actually helps Chito even more, given the fact that he beat O'Malley not long ago. Not only beat him, but knocked him out in the first round. So this is probably what we do here. Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo is the fight that I would want to see more than anything else at the moment, because there is no real number one contender for the title shot like Chito and Sean O'Malley, and for different reasons. Chito, in my opinion, deserves a title shot more than anybody else because of the merit of what he has done. He's on a win streak. He has really good wins against the top 10. But O'Malley has the name. O'Malley is the popular fighter and the guy that most of the casual fans probably want to see fight for a belt. So how you solve this whole situation is you bring in Henry Cejudo in the meantime, have him fight Aljamain Sterling, and him beating Aljamain, potentially, we'll just say hypothetical, I do favor Cejudo to definitely win that fight. It would also open up Merab's chances of fighting for a belt, because remember, Merab would never fight Aljamain Sterling. So as long as Sterling is the champ, Merab is just filling in a space in the top 5. He would never fight for the belt. So you have Henry Cejudo fight Aljamain Sterling. In the meantime, you can have Chito Vera fight Sean O'Malley, have that rematch. One of, if not the biggest fight in the whole bantamweight division. Both guys are relative stars in their countries. Both guys have a lot of following, and it's a fight that the UFC can definitely promote to another level. And it's between two guys who are in the top 5. TJ Dillashaw is going to be out, so he can't fight anybody. And then things are up in the air. Merab, Yan, and Cory are all left right there. So what I would say to do is Cory Sandhagen versus Merab. Given the fact that they're both right next to each other in the rankings, Yan's coming off a loss against the guy who was number 11, so I would do Petr Yan versus Rob Font. This would make a lot more sense in my opinion, where the winner of Chito and O'Malley would get the next title shot. Yan, Merab, and Cory are relatively one win away from a title shot, depending on who they would fight. What you could probably do is the win of Cory and Merab fights Yan, who would most likely beat Rob Font, let's be honest, and that guy will get the title shot after the winner of Chito and Sean O'Malley. So that's how the matchmaking should probably go. Who do I favor in all these fights? I think Chito beats O'Malley again. I think his cardio is going to be a big asset in this one. There's no way that fight should be 3 rounds. That should definitely be a 5-round fight. If it is 3 rounds, you can kind of favor O'Malley, but if it's 5, I 100% favor Chito to win that one. He's a much better fighter in the later rounds than he is in the early rounds. The leg kicks are always going to be a weapon for Chito. It is a closer fight, I believe. I think Sean O'Malley's distance striking could get him some success there, but Chito's defense is some of the best in the entire UFC right now. The guy does not get hit clean. Because of this, I could definitely see where Chito is able to deflect punches and find counter opportunities on O'Malley, and he would do very well in the clinch as well. We'll even see if he tries to attempt a takedown in the fight, just to switch it up a bit. It is a closer fight. Marlon Vera doesn't win 100% or anything like that. I would give it like 60-40 for Chito to win this, specifically if it is 5 rounds. Now, Merab and Cory, I would have to favor Merab in this one. I think his wrestling may be too strong. I think he would ride this out to a decision. It probably would not be that fun of a fight. It would only be exciting if Cory's able to find a flying knee in there or some big strike to change up the trajectory of that fight. But most likely, Merab would shoot takedowns constantly, hold Cory up against the fence, take him down against the fence, and put his head closer so he can land some ground and pound shots and control the fight until he wins the decision. And Yan just absolutely destroys Rob Font. I mean, imagine what Jose Aldo and Chito did to Rob Font. Yan would do that times 10, and I think eventually would find the finish, be the first man to knock out Font in a fight. And as for Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo, so Cejudo hasn't fought in a while, so we don't know exactly how he's going to show up. But stylistically, if we just think about when he was in his prime, where does Sterling have success in the fight? He can't take him down. That would never happen. And when it comes to the striking, there are some kicking opportunities for Sterling, high kicks and front kicks to the face and stuff. But for the most part, Cejudo's entries from a distance are going to be so quick, and he's going to be so pinpoint with that right hand, it's going to be really hard for me to see Sterling getting away from those kind of shots. He might back up a lot from it, but that's only going to close him in. And Cejudo's a master at boxing you against the fence. He does it against everybody. Look what he did to Marlon Moraes, who is a huge fighter. Pressured him, crowded him, boxed him against the fence, and landed really good shots and took him to the ground and all of that. He probably doesn't want to take Sterling to the ground, but it's a lot easier of a guy to strike with than prime Marlon Moraes. Really difficult fight stylistically for Aljamain Sterling in my opinion. So with all of that, how does the rankings look? Now this is the biggest debate. Who would be the #1 contender? Now I can agree with a lot of different options. Some people think it should be Sean O'Malley. Some people think TJ should stay there or Merab should be there. In my opinion, because of how everything unfolded at UFC 280, I think Chito should be the #1 contender. I think he should be the #1 guy in the division right now, given the fact that you can't put O'Malley above him. It's hard to put O'Malley above him. Yes, he beat the #1 guy, but it was a controversial decision that shouldn't have went his way. We have to also count performances, right? Chito has beaten everybody he's fought, convincingly. He's finished almost every single one of them. He's coming off a win against Dominic Cruz, Frankie Edgar, Rob Font, and Sean O'Malley. Rob Font was a top 5 fighter. And now Sean O'Malley, who's probably going to be in the top 5, you can't really rank him above the guy who knocked him out in the first round. I understand if they had a close fight or something, but it wasn't even close. The fight ended in 1 round. So because of all of that, I would have to put Chito at #1. This is probably not going to happen. I'm going to be honest here. I think maybe Sean O'Malley might take it, or Merab, or TJ keeps that spot, but I honestly think that Chito should be credited that #1 contender spot. #2, in my opinion, should be Merab. Merab is on the longest win streak out of all of these guys. And even though he didn't beat a load of great fighters in the top 10 or 15, he has a win over Marlon Moraes on his way out the UFC, but he did beat Jose Aldo, who was top 3. It was a pretty boring fight. The way he did it wasn't super exciting, but at least it was convincing, which is something you can't say about O'Malley. That's why I can't put O'Malley above him, because not only did he beat a top 3 guy convincingly, but he also has a much longer win streak. After him, I would put O'Malley. I would put Sean O'Malley at #3 because he does have an official win over the #1 contender, and that's pretty much the only reason, right? You can't put Petr Yan above him given the fact that he lost, and because Yan has to be behind O'Malley, it's going to jump O'Malley so high up in the rankings. So in my opinion, after that, you have Petr Yan. Petr Yan should be #4 because he has a win over Cory Sandhagen, who you can't rank above him. He did very well against Aljamain Sterling in both fights. He beat Jose Aldo. It's just you can't rank him above Sean O'Malley, so he should be #4. #5, in my opinion, should be TJ Dillashaw. TJ also beat Cory Sandhagen, which I believe Cory was robbed in that fight, but he does have an official win over him and really hasn't lost convincingly to anybody in the bantamweight division outside of like Dominic Cruz. And that was way back in the day. That was so long ago, you can't really look at that anymore. So because of that, I would have TJ Dillashaw #5, and #6, I would have Cory Sandhagen. Cory is in a bit of a difficult spot because he's coming off 1 win against Song Yadong in a fight that was super close. And before that, he had a 2-loss streak against TJ and Petr Yan. Before that, what were his wins? Frankie and Marlon Moraes. And before that, he lost to Aljamain Sterling. You absolutely could not put Cory higher than #6. And then #7 is Rob Font, and then it just carries down from there. So that's, in my opinion, how you should rank the bantamweight division right now. It's a bit of a mess. There's a lot of guys that can switch around and stuff, but this seems like the most fair in my opinion. So the bantamweight division is on fire right now. I can't wait to see what happens with the rankings and can't wait to see who gets matched up with who. And leave in the comments below, what do you guys want to see? Who do you guys think is the #1 contender? And what fight should get put together? I'm curious to see what you guys say as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video.